oral reading fluency, the ORF, provides screening information about accuracy and rate. So it isn't a complete assessment of fluency and context. So it's missing a piece here, right? And the DIBELS nonsense word fluency and oral reading fluency don't address comprehension at all. Even though strong comprehension would support performance here, it doesn't give us data about that. So the location of where these assessments fall on the cognitive model is one important piece of information. But we want to weave that information together with other things that we're learning. So if I have an assessment in, let's say, in every box in the model, that might seem positive. But if all of those are low quality assessments or inauthentic, and they have something called weak construct validity, which is something we'll keep learning about this week and in coming weeks, then I need to question how useful my data is for informing instruction. So, for example, we do see reading comprehension assessed in multiple ways at Oakton or multiple times. But the question is, how strong is the construct validity for the Journeys assessment, which is like short passages, multiple choice questions? And the construct we're asking about here is real reading, right? Comprehending the way you and I comprehend. So how well does that task of reading a short passage and answering a multiple choice question match up with what you and I do when we're doing reading comprehension? That's really the crux of what construct validity is asking. So the question also is like, do the assessments used by Oakton tell us all we need to know about comprehension? Are they the most helpful assessments for guiding our comprehension instruction? Or might you swap out some, delete some, to get a more useful constellation of data? And similarly, the Journeys multiple choice assessment has questions that address decoding, but it's difficult to gather useful information about phonics decoding on a silent group assessment, right? Because what we need to know isn't just how good are they at decoding, it's, what onsets and rhymes have they got pinned down? Where are they on, say, decoding words with complex medial vowels and so on? Like, how do I know what to teach? And I can't usually figure that out just from a paper pencil test like this. Okay, so that was a long diatribe about this. And I am hoping in your discussions you will kind of see if you can come to a consensus about where all those pieces fall, because working toward consensus forces you to think together. Okay, cultural validity. What do I want to say about cultural validity? Okay, so I'm confident that you are all really carefully doing all of your readings. I want to encourage you to make that a little clearer in your writing and your posts and any videos that we're doing, that you are applying not just sort of the gist of the chapter, but kind of the meat of the concepts. So for example, understandably, we focused a lot on the topics and the vocabulary that were used in the assessments we examined for cultural validity. That's totally appropriate, but we want to go beyond just language, right? We want to look also at the assumptions and the norms and the format of the assessment, the format of student response, and so on, and consider, could that advantage or disadvantage some students? You all provided vivid examples of potentially weak cultural validity, and I'm hoping it's popping out to you as you're looking through these, that these examples are everywhere. And you may run into someone or even a voice inside your head that's thinking, okay, so now we can't even talk about ice cream or the beach. Like, what can I have them read a passage about if what seem like sort of mundane activities are considered culturally biased? And I'm going to leave that question hanging for you. It's very tempting for me to make a speech about it, but I want you to think about that because, that is something you'll run into. And just consider how what you're critiquing here in terms of cultural validity is relevant and actionable, and how it probably doesn't mean that we can never talk about the beach. What's a middle path that's going to serve all the people, basically. So I hope that will come up in your discussions. I'm also interested, as you read the Yoon piece and the Del Rosario Basera piece, how you're taking your learning there into action steps and practice in your classroom. So, like, what specific actions can you take to do things like learn about your students' cultural backgrounds in ways that will help cue you in to their different ways of conceptualizing and categorizing the world? And I mean that in relation to all of your students. So also consider how Yoon's piece informs our thinking about how we speak and write about our students. It's a really powerful piece. And I do feel like I'm hearing a lot of asset-based language in your discussion of your students. Your assessments for your tutoring that you discussed on Flipgrid here. Lots of good thinking here. I'm going to take us back to the syllabus and this resource about the literacy tutoring project. So I'm in the syllabus on page 5, and on page 5 you've got the course requirements. Here's the literacy tutoring project, and it says follow this link for more information. And this is something to kind of revisit, I don't know, weekly or so, to make sure that you're on track with what all the requirements are. So you're going to be doing this multimedia presentation at the end, putting this all together, but you want to be setting yourself up for success along the way. So one of those things is selecting your assessments. And I think I heard this from most of you, that at least one of your assessment tools must address comprehension or writing composition, meaning making, right? Something on a more meaning oriented level than just decoding or letter knowledge, that kind of thing. And you'll focus on comprehension and or writing composition as one of your goals for your student as well. So as you're thinking about that, you're going to be doing some really, really important reading this week that's going to be relevant to this work. Let's take a look here. So this week you are looking at, let's see, week 4. You're going to be looking at first a couple of chapters from McKenna and Stahl that address comprehension and strategic thinking. And that is going to help you with some questions that I remember James posed, but he wasn't the only one, as far as how can I get deeper into pathway 3? How can I get deeper into comprehension, strategic thinking, meaning making? So there's going to be some tools there that will be helpful. Then these pieces here are vitally important. Please read them closely. They're really going to help you think about the different purposes for assessment and partly how terribly overblown our usage of screening tools has become, and how we incorrectly use the data from screening tools so often. This is a red lights flashing key idea in the course, and I really hope that you'll focus attention on it. So with that in mind, as you look at the tools you're using with your student, pay attention to going beyond just screening tools, even if you have something that looks like a comprehension screener, because you need these tools to help direct you toward specifically what you need to teach to support the student, and not just say like, hey, something's wrong here, which is really all a screening tool can do. So I was really excited to hear you all talking about different kinds of assessments. One that piqued my attention was the qualitative spelling inventory. If you're not familiar, this is a really useful tool that it positions you as a thinker and decision maker, and helps you target your instruction right into a student's zone of proximal development. And that's fantastic. As you're thinking about the use of screening tools and RTI approaches, also be thinking about consequential validity, which is a concept we'll learn more about in coming weeks. But it is what it sounds like, right? It's about the consequences of our assessment tools and our practices, right? So at an extreme, if we gave a multiple choice test and then posted all the kids' scores on the wall in the school with their names next to it, obviously there would be some fallout from that, some consequences for their well-being that would far outweigh the value that we might get from that assessment tool. So that would be negative consequences. We can also think about assessment tools and practices that lead to improved instruction and student empowerment and so on. So be thinking about those issues as you are selecting your pre-assessment tools, and maybe you might think about supplementing what you already have, or just, analyzing it in a different way and so on.